Sometimes I look at the universe and wonder if we have any idea what we are actually living inside. We wake up, go to work, worry about money, check our phones, eat dinner, argue about politics, pay bills, grow older, and repeat the cycle. Most of our attention is focused on the tiny world immediately surrounding us. But above all of that is something almost impossible to comprehend. The universe. And the deeper I think about it, the stranger existence becomes. We are inside something we barely understand. The universe isn't simply a collection of stars floating around in an empty container. Space itself is part of the universe. Time is part of it. Matter is part of it. Energy is part of it. And somehow, everything we have ever known emerged within this enormous cosmic structure. According to our best scientific understanding, the observable universe developed from an extremely hot, dense, early state roughly 13.8 billion years ago. Space expanded, matter formed, stars ignited, galaxy developed. Inside stars, simple elements were transformed into heavier ones. Those stars eventually died, scattering those elements back into space. New stars and planets formed from that material. Eventually, on at least one small planet, orbiting one ordinary star, chemistry became biology. And biology became conscious enough to ask, what is all of this? That might be one of the strangest facts about the universe. The universe produced creatures capable of thinking about the universe. Space may not be what we think it is. When I imagine space, I instinctively picture emptiness, a giant black void with objects floating through it. But modern physics gives us a much stranger picture. Space and time are intertwined into what physicists call space-time. Massive objects such as stars and planets affect its geometry. Earth isn't simply being mysteriously pulled toward the sun in the everyday sense. The sun changes the geometry of space-time around it, and Earth follows a path through that curved geometry. Gravity, in Einstein's general theory of relativity, becomes geometry. Even time itself isn't universal. Two people can experience slightly different amounts of elapsed time depending on their motion and the gravitational fields around them. That means there isn't necessarily one giant cosmic clock ticking identically everywhere. Time is woven into the physical structure of reality. Then quantum mechanics makes everything stranger. If relativity changed our understanding of space and time, quantum mechanics shattered many of our everyday intuitions about matter. At extremely small scales, nature doesn't behave like the familiar world around us. Quantum objects are described through probabilities. Properties that seem definite in ordinary life can behave very differently at microscopic scales. Particles can exhibit wave-like behavior. Quantum systems can become entangled so that their properties are correlated in ways classical physics cannot reproduce. The deeper physics investigates matter. The less reality resembles the solid world our senses tell us exists. Take your hand. It feels solid. A table feels solid. A wall feels solid. But atoms contain nuclei surrounded by quantum electron distributions, and the scale of the atom is enormous compared with the nucleus inside it. The sensation of solidity emerges largely from electromagnetic interactions and quantum principles preventing matter from simply passing through matter. So even solid is more complicated than it appears. Most of the universe is mysterious. Here's where things become even more humbling. The ordinary matter that makes stars, planets, oceans, trees, buildings, animals, and human beings represents only a small fraction of the universe's total cosmic energy budget. Observations indicate that much more is associated with what scientists call dark matter and dark energy. Dark matter appears to influence galaxies gravitationally, yet its fundamental nature remains unknown. Dark energy is the name given to whatever is responsible for the observed accelerated expansion of the universe. But its underlying nature is also unresolved. Think about what that means. Human beings have developed nuclear reactors, particle accelerators, spacecraft computers, and artificial intelligence. We've measured gravitational waves. We've photographed the environments around black holes. We've mapped enormous portions of the cosmos. And yet most of the universe, by the standard cosmological accounting, is associated with components whose fundamental nature we still do not understand. We are intelligent enough to recognize the mystery. We are not yet intelligent enough to solve all of it. The size of the universe changes my perspective. The observable universe stretches roughly 93 billion light years across. That number is almost meaningless to everyday intuition. A light year is the distance light travels in 1 year. Light moves about 186,000 miles every second. Yet light still requires years, centuries, millions of years or billions of years to cross many cosmic distances. When we look deeply into space, therefore, we are also looking backward in time. The light from the sun takes a little over 8 minutes to reach us. The light from distant galaxies may have been traveling toward Earth for billions of years. Astronomy is therefore almost like archaeology performed with light. We don't simply see distant objects. We see their past. And we don't know what lies beyond the observable universe. This is another idea I find fascinating. The observable universe isn't necessarily the entire universe. It represents the region from which information has had enough time to reach us. Given cosmic expansion and the finite speed of light, there may be vastly more universe beyond what we can observe. Possibly infinitely more. We don't know. And if the universe is infinite, that introduces questions that almost break ordinary intuition. What does infinity physically mean? Does space continue forever? Is our observable universe merely one region of something incomprehensibly larger? Could our universe itself be part of a broader structure? There are scientific hypotheses involving cosmic inflation and possible multiple universes, but we don't currently have evidence establishing the popular idea of countless parallel universes as fact. The honest answer remains: we don't know. And I think those three words are incredibly important. What happened before the beginning? People often say the Big Bang was the beginning of everything. But that statement can be misleading. The Big Bang theory describes the evolution of the universe from an extremely hot, dense, early condition remarkably well. It doesn't necessarily give us a complete explanation of why existence exists. And asking what happened before the earliest universe creates another problem. If time itself is part of the universe, the concept of before may eventually lose its ordinary meaning. It's like asking what is north of the North Pole. Maybe there was something earlier. Maybe our universe emerged from another physical state. Maybe the universe cycles. Maybe quantum gravity will eventually reveal an entirely different picture. Or maybe the question itself assumes something about time that isn't fundamentally true. We simply don't know yet. Then there is consciousness. For me, this may be the greatest mystery. Matter exists. Stars exist. Planets exist. But somehow certain arrangements of matter become alive. And at least some living organisms become conscious. I can look at the night sky. I can experience it. I can feel wonder. I can remember yesterday and imagine tomorrow. I know that I exist. How does physical matter produce subjective experience? Neuroscience has discovered enormous amounts about how brain activity relates to perception, memory, emotion, and behavior. But the fundamental nature of consciousness remains deeply debated. Why should electrical and chemical activity inside a biological brain produce an inner experience at all? Why isn't the brain simply processing information without there being someone inside experiencing it? That question remains unresolved. Maybe reality has layers. What fascinates me is how different reality looks depending on the scale from which we examine it. At the human scale, I see tables, people, buildings, and streets. At the microscopic scale, I see cells and molecules. Go smaller, and there are atoms. Smaller still, nuclei and electrons. Inside nuclei are protons and neutrons. Inside those are quarks and gluons. Eventually, our ordinary language starts becoming inadequate. Likewise, zoom outward. A person becomes a tiny point. Earth becomes a dot. The solar system becomes almost nothing. The Milky Way becomes one galaxy among hundreds of billions of galaxies in the observable universe. Our entire civilization disappears into the scale of the cosmos. Reality seems completely different depending upon where I stand. Maybe we aren't separate from the universe. This is the idea that affects me the most. We often talk about ourselves as though we were placed into the universe. But physically, that's not really what happened. We came from it. The carbon in our bodies was produced through cosmic processes. The oxygen we breathe has an astronomical history. The calcium in our bones and iron associated with our blood ultimately trace back to generations of stars and stellar explosions. We aren't visitors standing outside nature and observing it. We are arrangements of the same matter, governed by the same physical laws as everything else. In that sense, when a human being looks through a telescope and studies a galaxy, one part of the universe is examining another part of the universe. That is extraordinary. Does the universe have a purpose? Science becomes much more limited when we ask this question. Science can investigate how physical systems behave. It can test predictions. It can measure cosmic expansion. It can study particles. It can reconstruct portions of cosmic history. But purpose is different. Why does anything exist? Why are there laws of physics? Why are those laws mathematically describable? Why does the universe permit complex structures? Why does consciousness exist? Does existence have meaning built into it, or is meaning something conscious beings create? Those questions cross the boundaries between physics, philosophy, and religion. Different people arrive at radically different answers. Some see a creator. Some see a purely natural universe without an external purpose. Some believe consciousness itself may be fundamental. Others believe consciousness emerges entirely from physical processes. At this point, nobody can demonstrate a final answer to the ultimate question of why there is something rather than nothing. The universe may always be bigger than our understanding. Human beings have existed for an incredibly small fraction of cosmic history. Modern science is younger still. We are basically newcomers who opened our eyes a moment ago and immediately started trying to understand eternity. And somehow, we've already discovered an astonishing amount. We've learned that Earth isn't the center of the universe. We've discovered other galaxies. We've detected planets around other stars. We've split atoms. We've discovered quantum fields. We've detected gravitational waves. We've sent machines beyond the outer planets. But every major discovery seems to reveal another layer of mystery. Perhaps that is the real nature of knowledge. Every answer opens another door. And behind that door are 10 more questions. The greatest mystery is that anything exists at all. Eventually I arrive at the simplest question. Why is there anything? Imagine removing Earth. Remove the sun. Remove every galaxy. Remove every particle. Remove space. Remove time. Remove physical laws. Remove even the possibility of something happening. Absolute nothing. Why isn't that reality? Why does anything exist instead? I don't know whether humanity will ever answer that question. Maybe there is a physical explanation we haven't discovered. Maybe existence is somehow necessary. Maybe nothing isn't actually possible. Maybe the question reaches beyond what a human mind evolved to understand. But the fact remains, something exists. And somehow, inside that something, the universe produced us. For a brief period of cosmic history, we get to open our eyes and experience it. We get to ask questions. We get to look at stars whose light began traveling toward us before human civilization existed. We get to examine atoms that were forged through ancient cosmic processes. And yet, we get to wonder what all of this means. Maybe the deepest truth about the universe isn't that we have figured it out. Maybe it's that we have barely begun to understand what reality actually is.